It's actually been a really great month again this month. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say it because last month I said this is probably going to be the best month I ever had, and this month has only gone on topped it off. But this month is actually probably a bit more interesting than last month because there's a few more updates that I want to give, and also some big events coming up. And also I'm potentially looking at shifting up the portfolio a little bit after a few recent pieces of news and a few things that have been just erring me a little bit on some of the investments. So let's jump into this and let's look at some of the big events that have happened this month and what my thoughts of them are. So I first just want to look at the really big event for the portfolio that happened this month, and it happened right at the end of the month just to keep things exciting for me. And I also just want to discuss the implications of that because it does have some implications for the wider portfolio and the plan going forward. So the big piece of news for the portfolio this month was an investment report by Kerrisdale Capital, which is an investment company, and they've released a report saying that they are shorting MicroStrategy. And now, if you've been aware and followed some of the portfolio updates recently, you'll be aware that MicroStrategy is the biggest holding that I currently have. And that's because I've been using it as a proxy play for Bitcoin and the wider crypto economy, which I think is going through a little bit of a boom renaissance period at the moment. Now, the reason I find this report particularly interesting is not because of who it's from, but it's because of the reasoning behind it. And it's the exact same reasoning that's been making me a little bit uncomfortable the last couple of months with my own MicroStrategy position. The long and short of this report basically says that MicroStrategy has got too much of a premium value over its holdings. And now, with most companies in themselves, this isn't an issue. A company should be more than the sum of all of its parts, because a good company is being efficient with all the sum of its parts and therefore adding extra value. But since MicroStrategy is basically 95% a Bitcoin holding company and about 5% a small software business on the side that creates some cash flow to service its debts, that means that it shouldn't have quite so much of a premium because most of the value is just tied up directly in its holdings. Now, according to my calculations, MicroStrategy is trading at a net asset value of about 2.3 times. Now, theoretically, I think this should be somewhere between maybe 1 and 1.5. It's very difficult for me to justify a premium bigger than that. And the reason I think it should demand some premium is that MicroStrategy, unlike, say, a traditional ETF product which just tracks the underlying price of the asset, MicroStrategy can borrow money, it can issue new shares to acquire more Bitcoin, which can add value if Bitcoin goes up in value to the company. And so it's a slightly leveraged play on Bitcoin from that point of view, and therefore I think there should be some amount of premium. However, at 2.3 times, that's what's been getting me a little bit nervous about whether it can justify such a high premium. And that's exactly what this report is attacking, saying it should be somewhere closer to the 1.3, 1.4 range, which broadly aligns with my kind of feelings as well, even if I can't really put a number on it. Now, that did result in a bit of a sell-off in MicroStrategy towards the end of last week when this report came out, and because my ISA has a slight leveraged exposure to that, the ISA actually dropped about 20% in the last week of the month. But as you'll see, that hasn't had a huge impact on the overall month performance. Now, just before we dive deeply into the numbers as well, I just want to say about contributions. So there's been no real contributions, bar a couple of very small ones, which I just want to highlight. So nothing in the pension. However, in the crypto side of the portfolio, I received an airdrop this month to the tune of about £500, which is the second airdrop I've received this year. And so that was just reinvested straight back into the crypto portion. If you're not into crypto, that's probably gibberish to you, and you don't need to know anything other than it's about £500 added to the portfolio there. And the other small contribution came from some free shares I received in Trading 212, so thank you very much to anyone who signed up. And so that was to the tune of about £22, and again, that was just reinvested into MicroStrategy in the Trading 212 stocks and shares ISA. Now, if you want to get any more details, granular about this portfolio, then the best place to find that is in my newsletter, which is issued weekly, and I'll leave the links down in the description below where you can read previous issues and you can see what I'm looking at. Most of it, to be honest, isn't to do with my portfolio. It's my general ramblings and thoughts about just general macroeconomic things or very particular finance-related topics that have drawn my attention. So let's start with the pension. My pension savings are in two different places. So one is an old workplace account and one is a SIP account. So the workplace account I would love to be able to transfer out, but unfortunately I can only transfer out of it once every 3 years. So there's a fairly nominal amount of about £3,500 sitting in that pension, and the bulk is in my SIP. So come on, Standard Life, really get your game together and let me transfer it out. But the bulk of my pension is with the SIP with AJ Bell, and again that's largely invested in MicroStrategy. And the total values of the pensions have increased from last month, where it stood at around £107,000 total, to around £176,000. So a nice healthy gain there. Now, I did mention last month when I did this portfolio update that the pension is getting very close to that tipping point where I probably don't need to invest anything more and I can just flip it to a global index fund and then just sit on it till retirement. So if I take this 176,000 and I project out until I can access the pension and try between a 5 and a 7% real return, I think 5% is probably fairly realistic, and that's been the long-term average for global equities. Then that would see me with a pension pot of between about £750,000 and £1.3 million at the time I can access it. So it's pretty much job done. I'd just like to bump that lower end up to the £1 million, and then I think I can probably declare victory with the pension and focus on other things. The second part of the portfolio that I track, again, I mentioned it last month that I don't really know whether it's worth including, and that's just the cash. Again, very nominal numbers there, and I'm not really going to go into it. So moving along quite quickly to the Stocks and Shares ISA, this has been the standout performer for the month, and the Stocks and Shares ISA value chart just looks incredible now. It just looks like some kind of exponential curve going out when you zoom out, which is perfect and exactly what I want to see. So you'll notice my holdings are generally split about 25% in leveraged product, 75% in unleveraged product. And that's the idea, is to give me about 1.5x exposure to MicroStrategy. And I rebalance between the two to about the 25%, 75% split, just when I happen to notice that they're fallen out of kilter a little bit. And so that's seen the value of my ISA go from about £40,000 to about £75,000, or about a positive 85% return this month, which is just another absolutely crazy month. I mean, I feel like I keep repeating this now, and I'm going to have a bad month very soon, it feels like, but that's been, particularly the last 2 months, have just been absolutely wild in terms of returns. I'd love to say long may it continue, and I've got a couple of things I've got my eye on too if I do think about moving out of MicroStrategy, but again, I'll be posting that on my newsletter and then eventually updating the YouTube channel with more information if that happens. Now, you may be aware, but Trading212 are offering a free share at the moment if you join up using someone's referral link. So I left my link down in the description below if you fancy giving it a try. And it means that once you make a deposit, then you get the chance to win a free share worth up to £100. Now, realistically, most of the free shares that you're going to win are between around £10 and £20. But the best thing is it's free money. Even if you decide after getting the free share that you don't want to use Trading212, you can just sell the share and move on and withdraw the money. And so you get some free money anyway. And it's also good for me because if you use my referral link, I get a free share to the same value as the free share you get at no cost to you. And so it's a win-win for both of us. So yeah, I'll leave my link down in the description below if that's something you're interested in giving a try. And so the final portion of the portfolio is the crypto section of the portfolio. Now, this has actually been one of the less exciting bits of the portfolio, which I'm quite surprised about, to be honest, although this month there's been a bit of movement. So you'll know if you've watched this channel historically that the biggest holding in my crypto portfolio is Ethereum. And I hold that in the form of what's known as wrapped staked Ethereum. The reason I do that is for tax purposes. It's going to minimize the headaches that I have with tax bills at the end. But I do also have some tokens in a project called Gala Games, and that's really what's driven most of the returns this month. And so Gala Games has been expanding rapidly, and that's really pulled up the crypto portion of my portfolio from around £70,000 to around £96,000. And I have applied a 20% haircut to that, as I've noted on the chart, just to account for future tax liabilities that I'll have when I dispose of the crypto and realise the capital gains. So there's not really much more I can say. It's been an absolutely incredible month, and I mean, long may it continue, but I don't think it's going to continue for much longer. It feels like, especially the crypto markets, which MicroStrategy kind of relies on for a lot of its momentum, has kind of stalled a little bit recently. So we'll see if that continues to stay stalled. I think it probably will, because there's some large events happening in the crypto space later in April this month. So I think this is maybe everyone taking a bit of a deep breath to see what happens as we head into the Bitcoin halving event this month. Now, as I've also alluded to, there's a few changes that I've probably got planned coming up for the portfolio. And that's because I think MicroStrategy has run really hard and really fast. I've got a couple of investments I'm keeping my eye on, particularly in the crypto miner space at the moment. So hopefully that would give me a similar exposure, but in assets that haven't really run as much and as hard as MicroStrategy. But the other reason that I might need to make some changes to the portfolio is tax season is upon us. So the end of the tax year, depending on when I finally get around to uploading this video, will either just be about to happen or has probably just happened. And so there's going to be some kind of tax bill that I face this year because I've breached my capital gains tax allowance, and I've also had quite patchy income. I've not sat down and worked out quite how that will fall out into a tax-related bill at the end of things. So I may need to liquidate a small portion of the portfolio potentially to pay some of that tax liability, but I'm just going to assess what that is and assess where the portfolio is when that happens. I may just sit on that tax liability for as long as I can towards the end of this calendar year and just see how it pans out towards that time. But ideally, I'd like to be paying off a little bit earlier than that, just for my own sanity as much as anything else. But until I get around to calculating all of those, you can see my entire £1 million portfolio journey, which I'll leave in a playlist up here. And I'll also leave a random video down here, which YouTube will recommend to you, so you can see if the algorithm's got you nailed yet. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.